Hey everyone, I'm Cappy and welcome to Beyond the Plate. This is a podcast where we sit down with the world's culinary elite to explore their journey into the food industry and the social impact they have made in their communities. If you're new to the pod, welcome. If you've listened before, we're glad you're back. On today's episode, we talk with a true hospitality legend, Drew Nieporent. Drew's the mastermind behind the 34-year-old Tribeca Grill, where he's sitting during this conversation, and he's the co-creator of the global culinary phenomenon Nobu, now with over 50 restaurants and hotels worldwide, 56, I think, to be exact. Drew's impact on the restaurant industry, nothing short of extraordinary. So buckle up, or
stand clear of the closing doors, please.
Let's go beyond the plate. Actually, before we go beyond the plate, we want to give a shout out to our friends at Martin's Famous Potato Rolls. Martin's is an all-American family-owned and operated company founded in 1955 and headquartered in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. They are the number one branded potato roll in the United States, and as I like to always say, they can make almost any burger taste better. You guys, this week is the New York City Wine and Food Festival Burger Bash hosted by Rachel Ray. It's the 35th Burger Bash between the New York City Wine and Food Festival and the South Beach Wine and Food Festival. This is an incredible event. I've been to probably 98% of these events. You have like over 20 or 25 of the best chefs around the country all bring in their game to make an incredible burger. You walk around, you taste samples. It's so good. And a lot of these places, wouldn't you know, use Martin's because you just can't really beat that soft, pillowy texture of a Martin's potato roll. Anyhow, Martin's believes in giving back to their community and the world around them. Through volunteering time and donating resources, they support hundreds of charitable organizations such as food banks, after-school programs, disaster relief, and others that provide sustenance and comfort to people in need, both close to their baking facilities and abroad. To learn more about Martin's and check out some great recipes, go to potatorolls.com and follow them on social media at Potato Rolls for recipe inspiration. Martin's, we thank you. Drew, for our audio tests, we like to usually ask chefs or restaurateurs 3 or 5 of something. So for you, I just want to go with 3 of something. Can you name 3 restaurants or places where you experienced an exceptional meal or hospitality recently?
I went to Noma for the first time in Copenhagen, and it lived up to its reputation. And then a couple months later, I actually was in Barcelona and went to Disfrutar. That lived up to its reputation. And then, in New York, I think 425, John George's new place, is quite excellent. I went to Cocodoc, which was fantastic. I don't know if you've been there, but the fried chicken's good. And, the champagne, that was good. And maybe I should throw in a pizza place. We went to Sally's a Pizza, but not in New Haven. They opened a place in Stamford, Connecticut. And it was interesting because of the way they served the pizza. But the pizza was New Haven style. But now I'm at the stage of my life where I just want to check out places that, what I find amazing is Instagram. I mean, when you see a good pizza on Instagram or, some place on the Jersey Shore, anything, and the food looks good, I want to check that out.
Heck yeah. All right. Awesome. You sound good. Let's do it. Today's guest is one of the most prominent restaurateurs our industry has ever seen, having had a significant influence on the culinary world. He's the founder of Myriad Restaurant Group, which has operated some of the most well-known restaurants in New York City and beyond, including being co-founder of the globally recognized Nobu restaurant alongside actor Robert De Niro. For everyone listening, while we may not cover all of the incredible establishments Drew has been part of, I highly encourage you to look back at the impact that some of these places had. Anyhow, his career spans several decades and he remains a key figure in the restaurant industry. Please enjoy this episode as we go beyond the plate with Drew Nieporent. Drew, thank you for joining us.
Great to be here. Thank you.
The last time I interviewed you was actually 21 years ago.
Wow.
But I was a student at FIU and I did a report on you, Danny Meyer, and Rich Melman.
Oh, wow.
Anything changed since then?
You got the big 3.
I got the big 3. That's right.
The good news is we're all still breathing.
Yeah, exactly.
Rich Melman's probably opened 100 restaurants since then. Danny Meyer opened 100 restaurants since then. And now they're 56 Nobu, so we're all in the game.
There you go. I remember you sharing Myriad's 5 business principles like customer satisfaction, your employees, profitable business, partnerships, and having fun at what you do. Are these 5 things like still a guiding light for you?
I actually wrote a book. I wrote a memoir.
I was going to ask you. Thank gosh.
It was interesting because I had a stroke 5 years ago and I lost a little bit of my memory. And then I had cancer and I almost lost my life. So I figured, well, I have these great stories. I started to write them in a book. You know, being Robert De Niro's partner for 34 years, I see the restaurants very cinematically. So in one way, I kind of wanted to have a movie. But after seeing what they did with Hillbilly Elegy, you can make anybody look good. But the reality is movies are less important now than they were. My era, they were like super important. I've written the book, and that takes forever for a book to go out, so they're editing it, but it's finished. And all of these things come back to you, all the stories. And the people I wrote the book with, in a way, they were pushing me into a bit of a primer, like give us some numbers about covers and how to run the business. And I didn't really I don't specifically believe or want to write a book that's, oh, we used to do things this way, and therefore I'm such a great restaurateur, you should do it this way. Restaurant business, look, there are things that we did, and early on, because I've been doing this now for 40 years. My first restaurant I opened in 1985, so next year will be 40 years. It's the same basic stuff, but really at the end of the day, Andrew, it's like professional knowledge, and then it's the confidence in what you know so that you can motivate people, direct people, because without the people, you can't do a thing. So most important thing that I think I've learned is that the people at the end of the day, if you're fortunate enough to have somebody in your organization really talented and you've nurtured them and you paid them well, because if you haven't paid them well, you could nurture all your life, but you have to pay them well. But that's what leads to success. Look at Nobu. Nobu is in 56 locations now and still expanding. And we have hotels. It started basically with a no. He had a small place in Beverly Hills called Matsuisa, but when we proposed Nobu, it was basically no. But you'll have to buy the book now to get the full story.
I mean, I'm so happy to hear that, because one of my questions in bold was like, why don't you have a book? With your knowledge and expertise, it's like endless.
Can I simply say this? Like, I have never been somebody who was afraid to talk. I mean, I just talk. And I'm not even Irish, but I talk. But lately, I don't know what this is, but like when you get older, you don't like the sound of your own voice. You really like hear yourself preaching sometimes. And the book is more an amalgam of stories and fun stories. And then, of course, there are incidents in my life that are like one of a kind, whether it's, meeting Muhammad Ali or Colonel Sanders at Cornell, or working on a cruise ship that went to Russia when I was 18, or, I could go on and on. I've lived a charmed life. So the book will be fun to read, hopefully.
I love it. Sounds so good. You have this like energy and give off this energy about food, even when you're in a room, at a festival, at a restaurant. What have you always loved so much about food?
My father worked for the State Liquor Authority in New York City in the 60s. And because he was a sweet person and he helped these immigrants, these were people in the restaurant business right off the boat, literally. They would invite us to their restaurants and we would eat for free. And I thought that was an amazing privilege. And I took to it immediately. Like, think about it. You're going to French restaurants, Italian restaurants, Greek restaurants, German restaurants, Chinese restaurants, every kind of restaurant. Your mother can't cook, so God bless. Now you go out. These places are all theater. They're all beautifully designed places, usually. But the food specifically, like, how did they do that? How did they get the cheese to melt or the garlic into the bread? And, when I would babysit, I would actually, steal Julia Child's cookbook off the shelf and read that. And so I knew immediately from a very early age that I was going to be in the restaurant business because I had this great exposure. And then I was fortunate enough because I went to a very good high school in New York City called Stuyvesant High School. It's hard to get into that. You have to take a test to get in. Everyone goes to college. I mean, everyone. But I was like 500 out of 700. So one day my mother was like, oh, Willie Weisberg's mother says, you want to go to hotel school in Europe, but there's a hotel school at Cornell University. I was like, Mom, Cornell is an Ivy League school. It's like, I'm not getting in there. And, so we borrowed Willie Weisberg's application. We applied. We got in. I mean, I have no idea how I got in. But, and now, again, I'll refer to the book because there's a lot of stuff in Cornell. But Cornell is like, there's a School of Hard Knocks where you work in restaurants. And then the School of Hotel Administration at Cornell University. So I had both. I had learning experiences, and I went to a college for it. And then when I graduated in 1977, guess what? No job. Nobody wanted to hire me. That's really when the journey begins because you invested all this money. But by the way, college back then was $5,000 a year, not $70,000. And I worked, so I kind of made money going to college. But anyway, the point is that from very humble beginnings in New York, where my father worked for the State Liquor Authority, my mother was an actress and a very good actress, but in radio before television, very theatrical, that it was perfect for me to do this because I saw theater in restaurants, and then it's endless. The greatest thing about the restaurant business is every single day somebody's opening a new place somewhere in the world, and it's endless.
It's wild. Awesome. We talked about Dad. So your brother Tracy is a part of the restaurant group as well.
A partner. You know, it's always interesting when two people grow up in the same household. They're exposed to exactly the same thing. He went into advertising. I went into the restaurant business. Eventually, like right at, I think it was around 94 when we opened Nobu. That's when he started to do marketing work for us. And so he's worked for the last 30 years. But he's not technically a partner, although he's smarter than me, and he is my older brother. So
I saw a picture of you working at a McDonald's. When was that?
Okay, so now McDonald's actually wrote a book called The Golden Arches, and they feature all the prominent people who've worked for them. And, you know, it's been like Jay Leno, and there's a number of people. So in 1972, I was a senior at Stuyvesant. McDonald's up to that moment had been in the country, outside of New York. And then they invaded New York, and they're going to put a store right on 23rd Street where I grew up, like literally 1 block away. So I applied, and I got in, and I was like the opening quarter-pound grill man. Our store opened with a quarter-pounder, and it was an invaluable experience. Even to this day, I admire what McDonald's does because they're constantly trying to refine the product and stay within the community. But it was good to see Kamala Harris and Doug Emhoff were former McDonald's employees.
Is there something you learned from there?
I learned a tremendous amount. One is, first of all, nobody's a specialist. Like in the restaurant business, you hire somebody to grill the food or to be a garde manger. You hire people in the front of the house to be captains, waiters, or busboys. At McDonald's, they hire you and then they say, okay, work the grill. Okay, you work the grill, then you'll do $1,000 an hour, and they go, okay, clean the ceiling. Nobody's given any hierarchical. There's no pay changes along that lines there. So we're all treated the same. There's a great deal of camaraderie. They really instill a team thing. Before this word team, this is like, almost 50 years ago, we were a team. And then it's quality, service, cleanliness, QSC, constantly drilled into. And guess what? They back it up. The only thing they didn't do when I was there was make a good hamburger. But that's a whole another story. Now think about how life goes full circle. When Madison Square Garden asked me if I wanted to do a product at the Garden, I said, sure, I'll do a chicken Parmesan sandwich. And then they called me back and they said, no, you got the hamburger. And I go, no, I don't want the hamburger. Because they had a terrible hamburger. And they said, well, that's all that's left. You don't take the hamburger. It was like a challenge. And I literally said, I'm going to make a great hamburger. And everything, whether I could do the condiments and the meat and the bun, what do you cook these things on? And this was a dilemma because at McDonald's, we cooked on a flat griddle and it was terrible. The hamburgers were frozen and then, they defrost on the grill. I mean, it's just terrible. So I found this conveyor belt. It cooks 18 burgers in 4 minutes, toasts the buns on the bottom, and they come out perfect medium rare. And it's startling. I mean, it's unbelievable.
When you were at Cornell or after, did you have a mentor or anyone you looked up to at that time?
I always wanted to have a mentor. I would imagine the people that I sought advice from didn't necessarily think that they were my mentors, but they were. At Cornell, there was a guy named Vance Christian who was the spitting image of Fat Albert in the cartoons. He was a huge black guy, and he was very full of good advice. And then people like Joe Baum, who created Windows on the World, Rainbow Room. When I was jobless for a while, I went to see him, and he had graduated Cornell in 43, I believe it was, and he had opened all these restaurants, and I kind of wanted to do what he did. And he interviewed me, and he looked at me, and he goes, there are two people in this room, and one of them thinks he's Jesus Christ. I was like, what? But Joe Baum, I always sought his advice. George Lang, when he was alive, sought his advice. All the great people like that who were very giving of their time.
What was your first job out of school?
I was a freshman at Cornell, and one day walking through the corridors, there was a notice looking for 6 waiters experienced in Russian service to sail to the following ports: Dublin, Leningrad, Oslo, Bergen. I mean, it was like I'd never worked ever as a waiter. I called the guy up, and I got a job on the MS Vista Fjord. I was 18 years old. So for 3 summers and Christmas cruises, I worked as a waiter on this 100-passenger cruise ship, sailing to all kinds of places, Caribbean, like I said, Leningrad. One summer, I worked at Maxwell's Plum, which was a phenomenal restaurant in New York City on 64th Street and 1st Avenue. When I graduated, I told you, nobody offered me a job. I had interviewed with Western International, Hyatt Corporation, Rockefeller Resorts. Nobody offered me a job. So I went to work back on the cruise ship. And when I came off, the general manager of Maxwell's Plum, where I had worked one summer, offered me an assistant restaurant director's job at $300 a week, which I took, and that was invaluable. That was one of the great experiences of my life, because Maxwell's Plum it was unbelievable. And then later, he opened the Tavern on the Green. Warner Leroy opened Tavern on the Green in Central Park, which I also worked at.
Incredible. So when did you, and I'm sure plenty of places after that, but when did you feel you were ready to start your own thing?
I thought I was ready immediately, obviously, but I just couldn't make it happen. And then after I worked for Maxwell's Plum and Tavern on the Green, Warner Leroy was the owner. He was a great guy, but he did some stupid things. So I jumped out, I quit, and I went to work at French restaurants, La Reserve, Le Périgord, La Régence, and La Grenouille. And when I was working as a captain in these places, all these wealthy people would say, hey, if you ever want to open a restaurant, call me, I'll invest. So of course I called some of these people because I'd run the New York Marathon in 1983, and I would jog and I'd see locations. And when I called them for money, guess what? We're not doing that right now, blah, 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 blah. One day I was jogging, I saw this space on West Broadway in Tribeca, 1,500 square feet for $1,500 a month. And I had no money. I didn't have a pot to piss in, but I signed the lease, and that restaurant became Montrachet in April of 1985. And then David Boulay, that's another whole long story, but I had met David Boulay on a trip I had taken to the West Coast and offered him a position. And he was unbelievable in terms of his talent. And we got 3 stars from Brian Miller in the New York Times 7 weeks after we opened.
Incredible. How did that feel like as a young restaurateur?
So listen, that was like winning the lottery without being able to collect the cash. At the end of the day, that's when the work began, because, you had to put your head down, because we went from doing like 70, 80 covers to, 150 a night. And unfortunately, what we learned from that experience was also that David Boulay had a little bit of a hard time getting the food out of the kitchen. We were 3 stars and we were pissing off everybody. And then I did something which, in one way defined a bit of what a jerk I am. I fired the goose that laid the golden egg 13 months after we opened. But then Montrachet went on to a 22-year lifespan after. So 13 months, 22 years, not bad. Boulay went on to an enormous career. Just died a couple of months ago. He was 70 years old. It was almost impossible that he would die so young. But that was the first restaurant. Then Robert De Niro was a customer of Montrachet. And one day he would sit in the last table in the very back of Montrachet, and he had a very sassy, beautiful model girlfriend by the name of Tookie Smith. And one day Tookie was like, Bob wants to know if you'd like to open another restaurant in Tribeca. And I was like, are you talking to me? Because there's nobody else here. And that's when we did Tribeca Grill in 1990. Also got phenomenal review, 2 stars. And believe it or not, we're there 34 years. That was the only review ever from the New York Times. It just shows you how stupid the system is, but that's a whole nother thing. I mean, the young man, I was obsessed with the food critics, Mimi Sheridan and Brian Miller and everything. And again, in the book, I have a lot of stories how it was a big cat and mouse game. Mimi Sheridan, years later, was very tough. She was the harshest of all the critics. We became friends, and when she died, her son came to me and said, Mimi really wanted you to talk at her funeral. Like, what? So I spoke at a funeral. But, so much of life is like that. It's like competing and fighting a little bit, but then making friendships.
And so De Niro introduces you to Nobu.
Here's what happened. This is interesting. So we're going to do Tribeca Grill, which Bob wanted to call Tribeca Cafe. I had to explain that a cafe is a small, casual place. This is 200 seats. He says, well, I know a chef. I know a chef in California. He owns a place called Matsuisa. I was like, I know that he's Japanese to myself. I was like, why is he going to introduce me to a Japanese guy? But we flew Nobu in. Nobu sees the size of this place. Meanwhile, he had a 40-seat restaurant in Beverly Hills. Like, maybe one day I open small sushi bar. So I saw the friendship between De Niro and Nobu. And years later, not that many years, but it was a few years later, a space right up the block from Tribeca Grill availed itself. And I set the wheels in motion to open Nobu. We opened in 1994.
What makes that relationship work today?
Actually, the more restaurants you have, the least you're with each other, so you don't piss each other off.
Yeah.
I have seen, micromanagers, and employees don't like that. Sometimes when you're distant, it works better.
It's so funny.
He was on the West Coast. I was on my own to make this thing work, and it did.
This feels early on in like the celebs and chefs opening restaurants.
Well, they had Planet Hollywood, which was Schwarzenegger, Willis, and Stallone. 3 reputable guys. The food sucked. The place was all glitz and glamour. They opened place after place after place with no backbone, defrauded half their investors. And meanwhile, we opened Tribeca Grill and we did great. We're still here 34 years ago. So there was a little bit in the press about De Niro versus those guys. But look, at the end of the day, Bob also keeps a very low profile in the restaurants. He doesn't interfere. He eats in the restaurants, but it's not like he's a savant about food or wine. So we delivered the goods. The proof's in the pudding. Made a fortune on Nobu, fortune, as have all of us. The whole Nobu thing is just, I keep bringing up the book, and it's not even close to being for sale. But the point I'm trying to make is, in the book, I explain how basically Nobu said no. And he said no, not once, not twice, not 3 times. It wasn't about the same thing. It was different things. Somewhere along the line, he had to say yes. Right, Andrew? He had to say yes. There's 56 of them. Part of your life is about ascending a certain number of steps that you take to one restaurant leads to another restaurant leads to another restaurant and success. But then sometimes it just happens in a way that you're not sure of, whether it's in music, fashion, food, and you have to accept it. At the end of the day, if there is a lesson, it's like, it's not one person who did it. Even the person cooking the food, even though it's so important about Nobu's food, obviously. But the stars all lined up, whether it was David Rockwell Design, Robert De Niro's Celebrity, Drew Nieporent's Bullshit, whatever it was, it all lined up.
More than bullshit, Drew.
There's a fair amount.
Operations, expertise, hospitality.
Yeah, there is.
Is there anything you would do differently?
Yeah, but that's interpersonal more. It's not really, when it came to relationships, my thinking was, I'm Drew Nieporent. I got 3 stars over there, Montrachet. I opened Tribeca Grill over here, 2 stars, Robert De Niro, Bill Murray, Sean Penn. Then I opened Nobu. I'm not doing too bad. Who would be jealous of me? Who would try to do something to me? And when I say interpersonal, I was not aware how people get jealous. You're too young, but it's still on the air. But you know the show Survivor? The whole show Survivor, when it opened, it was like, wow, what a great idea. Put all these people on an island so you could cook, so you can,
Next thing you know, reality TV is the only thing on.
Well, right. But the first year, know what you found out? Had nothing to do with that. They formed these alliances. And in the alliance, they voted somebody off the island. Most of the time, they voted the most powerful or the smartest guy or the most resourceful guy. Why? Because he could stand on his own. So watching that show one day, I was like, wait a minute. That's kind of happening to me in a certain way. And it's like, even though people slag this stuff, slag these kind of shows, there are lessons to be pulled out of it.
Hey everyone, we'll be right back. This episode is brought to you by our friends at Kikkoman. Yes, that Kikkoman, America's #1 soy sauce. On this season of Beyond the Plate, we're going to catch up with a group of culinary innovators, referred to as the Kikkoman Kitchen Cabinet, and learn how they collaborate with the brand to foster culinary innovation and cultural exchange. If you missed our bonus episode earlier this month with Chef Shota Nakajima, be sure to check that out. We're going to share a conversation with one half of the talented team behind June Restaurant in Houston, Texas. Enjoy this short conversation with Chef Evelyn Garcia. Evelyn, you grew up in Houston and your business partner Henry grew up in the Bronx, and I'm very excited to hear you both come together through this lens of new Asian American food. Can you give us the lowdown on June?
Yeah, absolutely. What's really cool about June, and I think what resonates with a lot of our guests, which is amazing, is that although we grew up in very different households, Houston and New York, completely different sides of the states, obviously of the country, we had a lot of similarities growing up. And I think that's really the focus and the joy of June, is just that we grew up with very different cuisines and flavors around us. But at the same time, we had a lot of similar, not only techniques, but flavors. And we have very similar palates. That definitely helps us as chefs. And our upbringing definitely is showcased through that. I was born and raised in Houston, but I actually, enjoyed a lot of Southeast Asian food here in Houston. And Henry grew up in New York, and he is Chinese American, and he grew up with a lot of Latin flavors coming from friends from Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico. So although we were in different sides, him in New York and me in Houston, we had kind of like this melting pot of flavors that we both grew up in, and it makes it really easy for us to create food together at June.
Love that. Can you share a couple ways you all are using Japanese ingredients, including Kikkoman products, of course, in unexpected ways in the restaurant?
Yeah, for sure. I think my favorite, and it's also because it just really gets customers when they try it, is how we use hoisin in our michelada, which is a beverage. And I think for the most of the part, it's not the first thing that comes to mind to incorporate a kind of a condiment into a drink. And for me, I kind of really wanted to make sure we had a really good michelada, not just for myself, but Texas really enjoys micheladas. And I just needed my dad's approval.
Yeah.
at the end of the day. And I knew I was making micheladas for my dad, obviously when I started to become older enough to drink. And it was just a refreshing beverage. But I always really liked how like umami and savory it is. And I wanted to incorporate something that kind of gave you that hint, but it wasn't very overwhelming because at the end of the day, it's really about the lime juice and the kind of like the spiciness of the drink paired with the beer. And we ended up trying out, we were trying different versions of this, of course. And we ended up with a version of adding the kikkoman hoisin and some fish sauce, included some of the sriracha as well. And it just like made the perfect combination of it. Not too spicy, not too savory, but it's just a very well-balanced michelada. And I think for the most part, it's really cool just when people order it and then we explain kind of like the ingredients behind it. And they're like, I would have never,
Totally. That sounds delicious. How about on a food side, like with one of the kikkoman soy sauce products or something of that nature? Is there something given your like Houston background coupled with what he's seen, with his growing up that you use in a dish?
Yeah, for both of us, honestly, kikkoman has been in our pantry since we were young. Obviously, he's Chinese American and his family comes from Chinese restaurant background. So he used it a lot. And for me, my mom actually just being, first generation, kind of trying out a different job. She worked a long time in kitchens. She also always enjoyed Asian food. So we always had soy sauce at home. And for some reason within my family, she's known for her fried rice, which is so funny because like I cook Mexican food and then she just makes really good fried rice. So for us, definitely soy sauce is an ingredient that we kind of gravitate to very easily and quickly. But I really like incorporated it with kind of like sweet things where it's just kind of getting that balance of salty and sweet. So we definitely do this soy sauce caramel that we like to garnish like desserts with, just where you wouldn't expect it for sure. It's kind of what I like to go to.
I love that so much. That sounds delicious. How about for like a home cook listening, which I think there's home cooks that may like kind of dive into the soy sauce caramel idea, but is there a little tip on how we may be able to use soy sauce or another kikkoman product in a way that we may have not have thought of before?
I think also because I'm here in Texas, we gravitate to a barbecue any time of the day and year round. We're always grilling.
And for breakfast, lunch, and dinner?
For real. It's real. We're like, it's so easy. Just turn on the coals. We'll grill something up. But I really love finishing steaks with soy sauce and just kind of brushing it on at the end. Not really so much marinating it, but that finish, because it really hits the umami like right in the beginning. For some reason with like steaks, I'm all about just being simple. So that's for me, just like a little bit of soy sauce at the end, brushing it and getting that like, let it kind of caramelize is my go-to for sure.
I love it. This is all amazing. Thank you, Chef. To learn more about kikkoman, go to kikkomanusa.com/food service and follow them on social media at kikkomanfs. Kikkoman, we thank you. What do you tell younger restaurateurs or operators like starting on their journey or looking to expand?
Anybody who reaches out to me, I will give good advice to. But the game has changed. My whole thing was I never had a pot to piss in. So I didn't want to spend money. I basically settled in Tribeca where the rent was a third of what it would be elsewhere. And then I didn't put a lot of money into these places until they made money. Then I would invest some money. And so today, I think part of the lesson's got to be that you have to spend money to make money. That's number one. All these people, it doesn't matter who they are, pay these enormous rents. Enormous rents. I used to caution people getting into the business. I said, that's the very first thing. Don't sign a percentage rent deal because you're the one driving the beast to the honey. The location isn't, but everybody succumbs to this. So ultimately, what's happened post-pandemic, the rules have all changed. People charge an enormous amount now. $300 tasting menus are everywhere. And apparently people are not blinking at this. It's against my religion to charge too much money. Most I ever charged was $120, $115 at Cortone. And then, like now when I see Riyadh and Lee open Le Veau d'Or, and it's a bistro and they're charging $125 a person, I'm like, what the? It's like, that's their MO. So it's a different world now. What I basically tell people is just to become educated. Sometimes people believe they have a product and they're just not smart enough to be able to sell that product. Like I get pitched so many stupid ideas. It's unbelievable. And for a while, theme restaurants were a thing. You can't fool the people. At the end of the day, it's all about the quality of the food.
What do you love most about walking around the dining room?
I just love the action. I love the people. I like when I'm looking to see if this one needs more water or if their wine poured or how come they're waiting so long for their appetizer. I'm all over the place, but I'm old school. I like working that way. It can't work that way anymore when you have a lot of restaurants. Like people say, oh, how are Are you in your restaurants? Yeah, And now today I'm 69 as I speak to you. I'm a youthful 69, I guess, but I don't work the door. I don't work the floor, but I did for many years. That's one of the reasons the restaurants are successful.
I see you walking around random events or wine and food festivals or burger bashes or whatever. Is this because you love it or because you're doing research or both?
There's a couple of things. That's a good question because at the beginning, I wanted to meet these chefs who were becoming notorietous, like Charlie Trotter or Jonathan Waxman from the West Coast, or you name it, Alice Waters. And you'd go to Aspen, and it's like, the 10 best chefs, and we were one of the 10 best chefs. And there was no, Boulay was the same year, 1987, obviously had his own restaurant. So at the beginning, I would go to these events, one for the venue, two to meet the chefs. And then what you realize, then you start doing these charitable events, and sometimes you realize like these guys with these huge reputations, they don't know how to organize themselves because you're there, you're not even a chef, but you know how to, it's going to be 500 people, you got to be set up. I've done charitable events, Aspen, South Beach, New York Food and Wine Festival, Charleston. I do love it. I like getting away. I like traveling with my chefs. But most of all, I see these people with the big reputations, and sometimes they live up to it, but more times than not, and you would be surprised. It's eye-opening to me, like, wow, 10 best chef, come on, give me a break. And listen, things have changed, like James Beard Awards, Danny Meyer, myself. Now, they don't even want us. We're not even, I used to be on committees and things. It's like now, if you watch the Oscars, right, and all the actors you never heard of, the movies you never heard of, now you're watching the James Beard Awards, Best Restaurateur. I pride myself in knowing who's around the country to this day. I don't know any of these people. It's like they have gone so overboard. God bless them, because they were in Chicago, which was another travesty. But the first year they were in Chicago, Batard won Best New Restaurant that year, 2015. But the point I'm just making is that the world has changed. You have to accept it. You go with the flow. But, like Restaurateur of the Year, James Beard Awards. They never had it. It was a chef award, chef. So they came over to me one time. They go, oh, you're going to be happy. We have a Restaurateur of the Year award now. Okay, so the first year it's Danny Meyer, and Drew Nieporent, and Rich Melman, and Piero Salvaggio. Of course, Danny Meyer wins. The second year, Thomas Keller, Daniel Boulud. Because the chefs, they're also restaurateurs. So chefs are voting. It's the James Beard Awards. Thomas Keller wins the second year. Daniel Boulud wins the third year. Mario Batali wins the fourth year. I'm like, fuck, this is bull. Then they came over to me because they heard me bitching. They said, listen, we have a new rule. What's the new rule? You can't be a chef. You're just a restaurateur. Oh, great. That's like the Drew rule. So now I can win, right? So that year, it was Keith McNally, Rich Melman again, Tom Douglas from Seattle. He's a chef. But anyway, I won. But in Eater, it was like Drew won, but Tom Douglas really should have won. Like I only had 40 restaurants at that time. So then anyway, what's crazy is like Keith McNally, I think, won the next year. He didn't even show up. Rich Melman, I always lobbied for Rich, and Rich obviously was pissed off that he didn't get it before us. Danny Meyer, 5 years after Danny Meyer. But anyway, so now it's meaningless, right? The point is, if you look at the roster, I recognize Charlie Mitchell. He was the best chef in New York, right? Okay, guess what? Not even 2 months after the awards, somebody stole him. He's in another restaurant. So that restaurant, Clover Hill, who the hell is cooking there? And you're spending $250 per person. That place is going to go down the toilet. So anyway, that's just me bitching, but
You're making me feel good because I used to think I knew a lot going on around the country. And then I started tuning in more to some of these awards. And I'm like, I haven't heard of these 10 best new chefs or whomever,
Swear to God, like when Food and Wine started diversifying, and there's no problem with diversity. I want people to get ahead. So if you're going to choose somebody who's obscure and put him in the magazine, that's fine. But the more I would go, because I wanted to educate myself, the more I realized it's really become a generational thing. Now, like I do this Philadelphia event, Lemonade Stand. It's unbelievable. Mark Vector does a great job, and he always has the best chefs there. He's got people from all around the country. I basically have to invite myself because it's like, first of all, I'm not a chef. So the chef community and the chef camaraderie exists because guys like me beat up on these kids. I mean, I get along with everybody, so it's not a problem. And they do invite me after I sort of invite myself. But it's like, even my brother was on Table to Table, which is a New Jersey group, and they're having their 25th anniversary. My brother was a founder of this, and he goes, they're honoring David Burke and Peter Kelly, and they left me out. I was like, welcome to the club.
You should have put yourself up for outstanding chef or something.
Yeah, that's it.
You're like, I'm in the kitchen. I taste the food. How do you balance work and life? Do you take a break and not work for a couple of weeks? Or
You're very incisive, but I hate the word balance. I hate a lot of these sort of buzzword kind of things because all I heard when I was coming up was, oh, there's a balance. Like a little bit of work, a little bit of play, that kind of thing. As I was living it, here's my answer. When you're at the restaurant, your wife's pissed off. Your kid's pissed off. When you're with your wife and kids, guess who's pissed off? The restaurant. So there's no balance. It's not like, oh, it's good that he took 3 days off. Where is that guy? We need him today. It's like, I am from the school of there is no balance. Now, that being said, I think old age, when you get to be 69, that's when you can take a couple of days off if you need to. Keep in mind here, I'm talking to you at Tribeca Grill. My general manager has been here 34 years also. When you have people that are devoted and have worked with you side by side for that many years, it's not bad that you can take a day off.
When you're dining out, not at a restaurant, what are you looking for? What impresses you?
Well, these days, I'm scared every time I go out for a bad experience. So I never, ever, ever want to have a bad experience. So I do my homework. Like if I'm going to go to your restaurant, I'm going to look you up. I'm going to go on Yelp. And Yelp is BS too, but you see pictures that people took. And you see, oh, wait a minute, all the pictures of pizza are burnt. Why am I going to go there? It either convinces you to go or not go. Not the reviews, although I do look for hospitality reviews. So when I go to a place, that's hard to get into, like Cocodoke or San Sabino, Don Angie, there's a couple of places. First of all, it's good to be at least a little renowned, a little known, so that people look after you. Because I know if somebody tells us here at this restaurant, we're such and so, we make an effort. Whether it's a birthday, anniversary, or I own a restaurant in Oshkosh, Illinois, I don't care. We look after those people. So I do that. Like I couldn't get into Cocodoke. So I call, the PR person, Jacqueline Hensel. And it's interesting to watch varying degrees of hospitality. Some people are very generous. Some people pick up your check. Other people you've worked for. Other people who've worked for you, rather, don't do anything. Sometimes you've bought somebody dinner. You go to their restaurant, they don't buy you anything. It's kind of an interesting thing. It's never one way. I like these new restaurants, but they're like foreign to me. Winsun, Trig Brown's place in Bushwick. God, it's like, I could never run a restaurant like that. What's the other one I just went to? Calvin Eng in Brooklyn.
It's not Bonnie's, is it?
Yeah, Bonnie's.
Bonnie's, yeah.
Bonnie's. This is a new wave of restaurants. Ernesto's. And some of these guys are smart, like the dude from Ernesto's, we've had lunch together and they pick my brain and I'm happy. I hold nothing back. I'm not a jerk. So I want these guys to prosper. And by the way, like Trig Brown, I was in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, which I've done a charity there for 20 years. And this guy comes up to me and he just like drops a dime on me. Like he starts talking smack and I was like, who is this guy? Yeti, both wise. Yeti had invited a couple of chefs, like Billy Durney, who I am friendly with, Billy. But this guy Trig Brown, never heard of him. And so we hung out in Jackson Hole, invited me to come to his place in Bushwick. Now he's asking me to invest in a new bakery he's about to open. And by the way, I've never invested, ever, in another person's business except for one. And you know what I invested in? Ochomoco. And Ochomoco, that's also in Brooklyn. I think it's not Bushwick. I don't know. I forget where it is. But that got a Michelin star. Justin Bazdarich. He used to work for Jean-Georges. And it was just a total impulse. My wife likes Mexican food. We've been there maybe twice. It's been open like 5 years. But that's the only, and by the way, I've returned my investment. But maybe I would invest now. Nobody comes to me.
So a little while back, you actually provided me with a question for an episode we did with Stuart Brioza and Nicole Krasinski from Staper Provisions. You wanted me to ask them if they remembered what you said about their restaurant name and serving dim sum style, which was a fun episode. But I reached back out to Stuart and he did ask you to recite a few of your Drewisms.
The Drewisms, I used to use the expression, don't hose me. And people didn't know what that meant, but they kind of know what it means now. But don't hose me, you're a hose man. Did you get hosed? Why are you looking, hose? It was like a nice way to say, don't screw me. All right. So you say, don't hose me. It's like, or if somebody says something, you write hose. And I didn't even come up with it. It was one day, I think it was at Montrachet, one of the waiters says, you're hosing me. I was like, what are you talking about? And so I just latched on it. And I always say hello to everybody, but I never call somebody by their names. I usually find a name or I make up a name. And so it's when I'm speaking to them, they know it's me speaking to them because I'm probably the only one who calls them that way. But yeah, I guess there are Drewisms. I have to be reminded of some, but I've done good.
Like I said in your intro for everyone listening, you need to go back and check out some of the stuff Drew has done. That prefix lunch, at an affordable price back in the day is incredible. I would argue, and this is my opinion and no one else's, that like in the sushi world, in the US, I feel like Via Nobu made sushi what it is.
Yeah, that's true. What was incredible to me is like all these people, and some of them done very well, whether it's Zuma or Sugarfish, they're always trying to out Nobu. They never quite, because we're still here kind of thing. That's the other thing I didn't realize. When I started, I thought I'm kind of one of a kind. My experience, my know-how. And then I look left and right and I see a lot of people with almost no experience in the restaurant business. And some are lucky, some do well. And then I'm owe a lot of money to a lot of people. But
I enjoyed that Alan Richmond piece in the Times a little while back about you being like the last old school restaurateur standing. It's amazing. Drew, I want to talk about social impact and giving back. We talk about this a lot with all of our guests, chefs and restaurateurs. It's one of the main reasons we started the podcast, to kind of show the generosity of the industry. You've done a ton. I have a list of things, but I would love for you just to jump in and share whether it's a cause, an organization, why you do it, how you do it. I would just love to have you jump in.
it's interesting because we've been open so many years, so we always spread the wealth. But I've been 20 years on the board of City Meals on Wheels, food for older people. I've been almost 20 years at Madison Square Garden. They have something called Garden of Dreams it's like Make-A-Wish sometimes. But for underprivileged children, and it's a phenomenal charity. But we've given to AIDS charities and City Harvest, obviously, and I don't think there's a charity that we've really turned down. What I found was you have some restaurateurs who, when you solicit them, they're like, "Oh, I only give it to," and they name the one charity that they give to, and you have to respect that. That's the way they're going to do it. But with us, it's like, "Oh, can we get a gift certificate for dinner for two? Can we, taste of the NFL?" I've been to 24 Super Bowls, but that event. They didn't give us Super Bowl tickets. That event was a World Hunger event. And that event took me to 24 Super Bowls all around the country. I've done this. The point I guess I'm making is I didn't do it. It's not one-off. We've, for almost 20 years on some of these charities, every year that people could rely on. So it's been good.
I mean, it's pretty incredible. And the list goes on. And I say to everyone, give what you can, like whether it's sharing your voice, your money, your time, like you have something. It doesn't have to be the biggest check. It could be 30 minutes a month or $5 or a social media post, whatever it is. So appreciate that. Want to do a quick speed round here, Drew, and then we could close it out. What'd you have for dinner last night?
Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Incredible. Name a smell in the kitchen you love.
Garlic.
Name a smell in the kitchen you hate.
I don't hate any smells, but when you asked me, it was like Jean-Louis Paladin used to go, "I hate cinnamon," but I love cinnamon. And maybe Brussels sprouts.
Is there something that pisses you off, like in the dining room?
Everything. Like we gave a staff party once, and I called one of the managers over, and the cups were for drinks were like Dixie cups. They were tiny. I was like, "This is the way you think of the employees? You're gonna have to drink out of this fucking piece of shit." I was like, that was just a party. But everything pisses me off. Yeah, honestly.
What makes you happy?
When you see that things are clicking on food coming out of the kitchen is a big, when you have a chef who can get the food out of the kitchen, when you have a good kitchen staff, it's very valuable. You mentioned you drew in the book, but you had contemplated or thought about a movie. What actor is playing Drew Nieporent in a movie? Oh, that's a good one. So years ago it was Jack Black, but he's so grizzled now. And then when he went to Office, I saw this guy, John Krasinski. I was like, "Oh, this guy's an up-and-comer." Now he's, one of the biggest actors in Hollywood now, and he's much better looking than I am. So I'm going to have to probably recast it. But John Krasinski would. And he's a customer at Noble, but he would have been perfect. All right, so I know you want to open a Chinese restaurant. Is this a dream restaurant? No more. I mean, I've come to understand that you can't upscale Chinese food. It's like the quality of the cooking, you're never going to elevate Peking duck where it's got some are charging $150 for all. But you're not going to elevate it. Now, my new thing is, if somebody wants to collaborate with me, and this is the last thing I'll do a Jewish deli. I'll do a deli because I love Katz's, but Katz's is miserable. I mean, there's lines on the block. Food is, you have to wait at the counter. I don't like the shtick at all. So I would do a deli. Drew, thank you for your time. This was a pleasure speaking with you. I grew up in the industry watching you and what you were up to, and just to catch up with you this many years later. And guess what? Look. The burger arrived? The barbecue burger. It's soon to be at Madison Square Garden. Your viewers are getting a preview. It'll also have crispy onions. So it's a little crunch. What else is on there? It's on a Portuguese muffin, which is not an English muffin. It's a sweet, collects all the juices. And at the garden, we do bacon onion relish. We do a jalapeno relish, bacon onion jam, jalapeno relish. But they asked us for a new one, so that's why we're previewing this burger. Love it. Looks good. Sounds good. Hope to hear it, taste it, see it soon. Yeah, and I'm actually going to a Chinese restaurant tonight for dinner, an upscale Chinese restaurant. It's called YAO Yao, and it's very expensive, but somebody invited me, so hopefully I don't have to pay. But I am going to have to leave the tip, so that costs me. Report back. All right. Thanks, Drew. Have a good one. If you ever find yourself anywhere in the spitting distance, we got to have a meal together. Love that. Nobu or Tribeca Grill. Would love that. All right? Thanks, Drew. Have a good one. Thanks again to Drew Nieporent. Find him on Instagram at Drew Nieporent. To learn more about City Meals on Wheels, go to citymeals.org. To learn more about Garden of Dreams Foundation, go to gardenofdreamsfoundation.org. And to learn more about City Harvest, go to cityharvest.org.
We'll share links in the episode notes and at beyondtheplatepodcast.com. This episode was produced by myself, along with Ian Cohen, Joel Yetton, and Sean Petrosian. Our digital media producer is Sarah McClellan-Mee. Our music has been composed by Goldford. Find him at iGoldford. As always, special shout out to my wife, Katie. If you have not started following me yet, you should. Find me across all social media at On Cappy's Plate, or go to beyondtheplatepodcast.com and keep up to date with Beyond the Plate. Beyond the Plate is also on social at BT Plate Podcast. If you have a moment, we'd be grateful of your support by rating, reviewing, and even hitting that subscribe button to the podcast. Don't forget to join us next Wednesday for an episode of Beyond the Drink, our companion podcast to Beyond the Plate, brought to you by our friends at Ford's Gym. Thank you for listening to Beyond the Plate. I'm Cappy, and remember, there are never too many cooks in the kitchen.